This
yeah.
meeting is being recorded.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, so my brief comment will be focused on the issue of post-LLM AI for Islamic studies. So there's an important issue, an important aspect of training LLMs that was not directly addressed in Dr. Sayed's talk, but was suggested and implicit in the background. That has significant implications for the future of post-LLM AI in Islamic studies, which is the significant role of human cognitive input in producing, organizing, and curating the raw material for machine learning in LLMs. Not only does this entail the insertion of certain ways of representing knowledge, but what I want to draw attention to is the subordination and mechanization of human cognition in this large-scale technical infrastructure. It's important to understand that the foundation model paradigm is being advanced by various powerful state and non-state actors, not because it is the only way of operationalizing powerful computational resources, but because it provides an opportunity for the final concretization of their dominant position in computational infrastructures, where they are able to assert themselves as intermediaries in every areas of life and authorities over knowledge. The key point for my comment is, and has to be, that post-LLM AI in the form of foundation models and other forms of generative AI are bad technologies. Bad as in overwhelmingly prone to errors and technically unprincipled, rendering them totally unsuitable for a wide range of use cases. As an example of how unprincipled these systems are, just consider the recent discovery that Cloud's system prompt amounts to a patchwork of around 17,000 words of ad hoc instructions to constrain model behavior. Now, I want to be absolutely clear. I'm not saying that there is no place for computational methods in the Islamic context. What I would like to emphasize is that if Muslims are eager to adopt computational methods for studying Islam as an intellectual tradition, then rather than reproducing the accelerationist template for knowledge discovery that is currently infiltrating and reconfiguring the physical sciences, life sciences, and humanities across the board, then Muslims can do far better than LLM's foundation models, which at best should play an auxiliary role in supporting any project. Proponents of post-LLM AI for Islamic studies tend to focus on its role as a tool. However, there needs to be an important distinction made between the nature of tools and the nature of machines. Tools are adopted in ways that conform to human capabilities. In contrast, machines subordinate humans to the temporality and rhythm of the machine. LLMs should be considered not as mere tools, but vast computational machines for information processing that place humans in a subservient position. We should therefore question the wider impact they would have on the knowledge system of Islam. The only reliable system for the authentication, transmission, and dissemination of knowledge that we know works over an extended period of time is the Islamic tradition. This is a living, embodied tradition of knowledge, not a machinic apparatus for information processing. The adoption of post-LLM AI into this system does not entail the mere assimilation of a new tool, but if not handled with the utmost precaution, entails the total reconfiguration and dismantlement of the system of knowledge according to the logic of embrace, extend, and extinguish, which is a Microsoft slogan from over 2 decades ago to describe their strategy for market domination. We are currently between the embrace and extend phase with respect to post-LLM AI. Current proposals for the adoption of post-LLM AI in Islamic studies are problematic not only because of a limited technical critique of LLMs as an epistemological instrument, but just as importantly, since they uncritically reproduce the data science, machine learning, and software engineering pipelines from secular programs to accelerate knowledge discovery through AI. I'm afraid to say that the future of the Islamic intellectual tradition is not a massive GitHub monorepo. In these domains, practitioners, advocates, and evangelists from computer science and software engineering repeat the rhetoric of the virtuous cycle of knowledge, where a domain is computationalized to be suitable for AI. That AI helps to produce insights in the domain, and those insights feed back to improve the AI models. What I wish to argue is that there is no such virtuous cycle between AI and Islamic knowledge. The crucial difference when it comes to appropriating these methods in the Islamic context is the aforementioned domains are already structured for the mechanical production of knowledge. In the case of Islam, once knowledge is disembodied and severed from its roots in the hearts of believing people, we should expect a degradation and destabilization of the Islamic system of knowledge, not its renewal or revival. Current proposals for AI in Islamic studies would entail Muslim scholars being conscripted into the routine use of these tools and contributing to augment the power of a semantic and epistemological weapon that will inevitably be turned toward undermining the integrity of the religion, creating further chaos in understanding. There therefore needs to be a firewall between secular Islamic studies and Islamic knowledge, a fortress protecting the latter from the gradual incursions of the former, a quarantine zone protecting the integrity of the indigenous Islamic system of knowledge from academics operating in a secular context for the sake of their careers and gamified publication metrics.
All right.
Well, on the panel or whatever.
Thank you. Yeah.
Whatever is fun. Okay. Any thoughts about this or comments or? Yeah. Okay.
Appreciate the critique. So I think that there are a couple of things. One is I think the critique is especially appropriate when we're talking about these generative frontier models like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. And it is, I think, a cause for a lot of concern, and it's a problem that we all need to be thinking about is if, Muslims start going to ChatGPT, Claude, these frontier models and using them as if they're muftis, like they use Google, and that these models are not just capable of hallucination, but also because of what is done post-training, because of the type of material that they've been trained on and ingested on. We saw that Arabic, most of it is social media. It's only 0.6%. That there's a lot of cause for concern. And my concern actually is even greater, is that are we quickly approaching a scenario in which the use of LLMs for religious guidance practice amongst the people has reached a proportion where it really can't be restrained? And what exactly is our response? Like, are we dealing with a situation in jurisprudence, umum al-balwa, right? Has it become something like that, where something has become, a social practice has become so entrenched that really there's no going back? I think that is completely appropriate. I think in terms of the project of using LLMs in Islamic studies, my proposal or my idea, my research program is a lot more limited and a lot more conservative, because I agree that these LLMs have strengths and they have weaknesses. And kind of like one of the emerging themes in many of our presentations was that their strengths are pattern recognition, and their statistical methods, and they're appropriate for some things and not appropriate for other things, like deontic reasoning, deductive reasoning, rule-based reasoning. All of those things are highly appropriate and much more, in some cases, the right way to do things when it comes to ethical, legal, and moral and theological reasoning. So then where does that leave the use of LLMs in the Islamic studies? I would say that there are, other than these frontier models, let's put the frontier models aside, and we're not going to use the frontier models, or not the frontier models, any model. You're not using them in the sense of like a chat bot. What you're doing is you're feeding it slowly snippets of text, and you're asking it to do very conservative and very targeted objectives. Like, for instance, what we're experimenting right now is I give it a biography, a biographical notice, hundreds of thousands of them are in the tabaqat literature. And I ask it, can you extract the name? Can you extract the death year, the birth year, right? So essentially what I'm asking it to do is transform narrative data that is unstructured into some kind of structured format that then becomes the object of a historian or a scholar that they can use once it's been properly verified and it's been checked for errors and there's some sense of the error rate. So I think that this more limited use utilizes its strengths in pattern recognition, and hopefully is sufficiently distant enough from, from the pernicious ethical effects, theological effects that it might have on our community. This is my idea. And I don't necessarily think that, if you look back in our history, whenever there have been new ways of organizing knowledge, there's oftentimes been very ferocious debate. So when there was a huge debate, should we write down the hadith or not? There was controversy over even writing down the Quran. There was controversy at the printing press. So at every single moment, an innovation has happened, and there was controversy, there was debate, and then the Ummah kind of came to what I think ended up being the responsible choice for it repeatedly. So I think that we should not make we should actually not buy into the story of the evangelists who want to make these LLMs to be something like some alien being. No, it is a technology like other technologies. It has its strengths, it has its limitations. Let's experiment with it and find out what it's good at and what it's not, and use it responsibly. That's my proposal.
Yeah, shall I go? Okay. Yeah, so maybe Suhail, is it okay? Please. He probably has to go, so he probably has to go in a moment. So okay, all right. Sorry for the.
I consider Dr. Mahmoud our senior. I did my undergrad here, and he was a PhD student, and he used to lead our Friday sermons, and it was the sensible Friday sermon in the rotation that we had. My question is very simple. It's kind of summarized already with a lot of the comments here, but just you've all generally veered to a more skeptical side around AI. I'm currently in a more practical space, so we're using AI for systems in Zakat education and Zakat verification and other things where I work. So in the more practical, pragmatic tech spaces, AI is presented like it will solve everything, and we just have to start the train now, and there's nothing that it won't be able to do, basically. You're more on the skeptical side. So I just want to ask a very basic, simple question from almost all of you. AI, as we currently know it today, it might not be ready today, but can it form an AI mufti? Somebody who can listen to a question, give an answer in a way that works with all the layers of Islamic jurisprudence, textual reasoning, pragmatic reasoning, contextual reasoning. Is it ever possible? So someone here explicitly said, Zubair, I think you said, no, it is never possible, or at least not now. So I just want to know, is it, as we understand it today, is it a trajectory, or is it a not conceivable based on the limitations of the technology itself? Thank you.
Shuaib, I think you told me you have to go in 15 minutes. Do you want to say something or answer the question, or?
Yeah, sure. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Can everyone hear me and see me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. My sincerest apologies for not being able to make it there. Miraj, it would have been great to see you in person, man. I missed the opportunity. Unfortunately, I have classes even on the weekends. But just to respond, I am personally more on the optimistic side. I don't really buy into the skepticism. And that is because I have a feeling that, so there's two parts of the conversation that I think we need to be wary of. Technologically, what are the what ifs? And I believe that that's an open question. I don't know what AI could look like, or it doesn't even have to be LLMs. It could be a variety of different variations of what AI could look like. And the way to kind of test your boundaries is to have imaginal futures. That's the way I like to test things out. And do we have an iMufti today? No, I don't think so. But will we have, or could we have an iMufti? I think it's very much in the realm of possibility, 100%. I actually know for a fact that there are many teams who've reached out to me who are all in their own ways trying to develop one. So we have people, it doesn't matter who they are, but people who have tried to, alluding to what people have said here, scan books, scan manuscripts, verify them, validate them, and then be able to use that to be able to derive fatwa. And that's already being done underway. That's already, you know, in due process by various teams from around the world. And their line of reasoning is, and I appreciate the skepticism and the concerns that Yaqub has mentioned. I agree with some of them. There are always bad actors. There's always going to be mechanization of knowledge. And knowledge, to a large extent, at least in our tradition, is embodied. It's not a disembodied tradition. However, does that mean that it always has to be that way, or could it evolve in some way? I think that there's room for discussion there. And the line of reasoning that these teams have conveyed to me is they feel the need to develop these modes precisely because if we don't do it, other bad actors will. So it's a race game, right? It's a race game. So rather than being controlled over, we want to control the narrative. That's their line of reasoning. So at least on the technological front, I think that's the kind of line that I'm seeing. In the future, can we have an iMufti? I think that's in the realm of possibility. I think that what we're seeing right now are anticipations of those, preliminary aspects of those. Could we somehow one day see an iMufti that has usurped all knowledge, that is able to not just give you all the different fatwa of every single madhab, whether you're Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, or whatever? Could it even challenge existing opinions? Yes, I think that's technologically possible. Now, whether we want to socialize that into an authoritative structure, that is an open question. That is an open question. So Miraj, for example, mentioned the printing press, and there was a lot of debate around the printing press. So my question is, we were able to appropriate that, and now we have a spectrum. We have good publishers that are able to verify and, you know, the tahqiq of manuscripts really well, and so they have a brand. We have brands on the other side of the spectrum that are really poor, right? Even though they still dish out manuscripts. You know, Dar al-Kutub al-Ilmiya, for example, is one example. So just like this, will we be able to see something like that in the future? Yes, I think we will be seeing a future where we will see the rise of iMuftis that are on a spectrum. We will see some super good ones, and I can even foresee, for example, Azhar backing one up, right? Saying, this is the iMufti that you should trust if you were to go for an iMufti. I can see other actors that are even being utilized and developed by, you know, people that want to spread Islamophobia. They fed incorrect information. So in those imaginable futures, what is possible, impossible, I think you have a variety of scenarios that you can see ahead of you. But I am generally much more positive and optimistic in what I feel AI could achieve and will be able to achieve. Wallahu alam at the end of the day. But I hope that helps. That provides some food for thought.
All right, thank you. So other panelists, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Amina, and then Suhaib here.
Thank you. I wrote a paper on that question a while back, but it's not broadly available because it's not on my academia edu. But my observation at the end is it really depends on how you conceptualize the deduction of Islamic law. Like the presentations we looked at today took a very procedural approach, which broadly speaking, one can say is fairly representative of the pre-modern approach, that basically you've got a set of inputs, Quran and Hadith and so forth. You've got some procedures and rules and priorities, and then you've got an output, and there's an idea that the Sharia is stable forever and all times and all places. I mean, there's some exceptions, but that's a dominant viewpoint of it. And that's something a machine does quite well. Like the inheritance law, for example, we saw today, that's calculable, even if it's not doing it all 100% right now. But if you look at some of the more reformist approaches, so for example, believing there's social contextualization over time, new circumstances, maybe looking more at the intent of the text than what the texts literally say and so forth. These things, I'm not saying a machine can't do them, but there's a certain sensitivity which is much more difficult than just processing a lot of data and input and output. And those are the things a machine would probably have a much harder time with. And I find that ironic because these are new technologies, but they do better at the older way of thinking. And they don't do as well with the new way of thinking. For example, the inheritance law one didn't bring up whether or not inheritance shares should be changed in certain circumstances or cultures and so forth, which is a live question. And so I think, yeah, ultimately it depends on how you look at it, and that can sort of shed some insights on how we're thinking about things. And as Muslims, do we want to continue to think algorithmically and procedurally about Islamic law? Is that the right way to go forward? Or now that we have machines that can do that a little bit better than us, maybe we should be looking at things in different ways.
Jazakumullah khairan. First of all, I think what Dr. Yaqub said. Oh, please go ahead. Go ahead. You sure? Oh, not okay. Okay. So what Dr. Yaqub said was actually very packed. For a moment, I wish I was a computer so I could retain everything. But may Allah reward you. I feel like from his methodology, I heard وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهُ. Be cautious, right? Be cautious, and Allah Azza wa Jal will show you the path, which I believe it's not, I don't think any of us would disagree with that. But at the same time, I do agree with what Dr. Shaib said, because, and especially the point about if we don't own up, if we don't own our own tradition and basically manifest it in the realm of AI, others will. And I think the best example of that is what happened with AlphaGo. Have you guys heard of the story of AlphaGo? And basically, it was a deep neural network. It was trained on playing the game Go. It was very similar to the hypertree proof search algorithm that I mentioned. Basically, the hypertree proof algorithm is actually as a evolution of that. So basically, they brought the best player in the Chinese game of Go, which basically traditionally, and the Chinese culture, it is considered to be a game that requires transcendent human values of patience, wisdom, and the Chinese art of strategy, right? And what happened is AlphaGo defeated, I believe his name was K. He was a champion and the game Go. Defeated him so bad that he started crying, right? He started realizing that a thing that does not have patience nor wisdom, nor I guess strategy it does, has defeated him in his own game or in their own game, right? And that was the Sputnik moment of the Chinese, where they realized they need to take AI very seriously. And that is why they're at the stage they are right now. So I feel like there are a lot of parallels to make between the Chinese game of Go, and obviously fiqh is much above that, but there are parallels to make in the lessons that we can take, that if we don't do it, someone will come and destroy our tradition, right? So we need to have, we need to be very, very cautious. We need to have specialized models, right? We shouldn't be relying on ChatGPTs and Geminis, right? We need to have specialized models that actually specialize in particular fields, such as what Dr. Miraj is doing. I think that's the path, and then it has to be supervised, which becomes basically the protection between AI and the tradition, right? It has to be supervised by scholars, and I think that will slowly open up ways for us to learn more. Wattaqullaha, this is the part we have taqwa, and then that will open up doors for us to do much greater things. And I think the conversation goes back to whether AI is neutral or not. Is its neutrality essential? Is it the dhati, or is it because of something outside of it? And I believe that its neutrality today is not dhati. I don't agree with the narrative that it is dhati. It is because of the people that control AI and are at the forefront of AI. That is what makes AI questionable and challenging in many different ways. So inshallah, and Allah knows best. Jazakumullah khairan for your comments.
Can I give my?
Can Mahbub say something, and then
Okay.
he was meant to talk before. So
Sure.
yeah. Is it okay?
Can I just add to this point? So just on AlphaGo, so I don't think everyone's fully aware of some a small detail. So the AlphaGo team when they played against, I think it's Kai Wong. So again, this is what was done before. It was IBM's blue machine, Deep Blue versus
that was before.
yeah, versus Gary Kasparov.
Yeah.
Now that was a big feat in AI, but when the AlphaGo team came and they played against Kai. Now the complexity of Go compared to chess is of several degrees higher. Now, what the AlphaGo team had to do was they had to use something called distributed servers. So it was one guy's brain versus, I think they used 15,000 machines. So it was one guy's brain versus around 1,500 machines. So it just shows that the complexity that the human brain can do in a couple of seconds versus machines upon machines. Yeah. Just a point to ponder about.
Yeah, Bungen, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead. No, you're fine.
Thank you. So I just want to debate about the potential Islamic Mufti. Just to share my experience, I started AI in '89. Just to say that I lived in the different approaches of AI. And every time we consider where we are, it's the top. It's like we consider LLM, it's the end. It's not the end. I remember years ago, everyone was talking about the very basic deep learning approach. It's like that was the top. And then came the transformers. Transformers is the top. And everyone today is considering as LLM as the top. So we do know that for me, LLMs today are not able to replace any mufti, any human mufti. But if you consider that later on, 50 years later, with the symbolic, neurosymbolic AI, which is the mix between the symbolic approach and the neural approach, we can maybe improve. But I think we would need more, because so far we are still in the what is called the vertical AI in one individual entity. While human beings, our community, our group, we are intelligent because we are living in the community. And so far we have not yet reached the horizontal intelligence. We are still in the vertical one. And we're still far from what we as individuals are good in one individual. At the same time, is it possible or not in the future? Why not? I started from the Quran. What Allah said, you cannot create a soul. You cannot create a bee or something similar, but anything else, go ahead. فإن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا. If you are able to do it, do it. So there is nothing that stops us in doing more. My view, LLMs are not enough to replace any human being for the moment, except about something very specific, very narrow things. But a mufti, to make any decision, it needs a lot of knowledge, not data, but knowledge again. And I remember maybe also Yann LeCun from Meta, who said years ago, he's among the founders of deep learning. He said, LLMs today are like a baby of 2 years, no more. So I think we still need improvement in AI to be able in the future. I remember I gave a talk in medical school talking about AI possibilities, how to apply it in medical field. And at the end, one student came to me and said, oh, maybe we won't need any medical doctor in the future. I said, yes, it's possible. So I think, yeah, in the future, yes, but we need more improvement on the improvement of AI itself, not the application of the current AI. Yeah.
Can I? Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, so I think.
Yeah, no, if somebody else wanted to speak, it's okay. I just wanted to add something, but please go ahead.
Yeah, Mahbub, I think you need to talk. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to.
Did you unmute or? Yeah. Try the other way.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I'm going to have to leave shortly. If I'm not going to get a chance to just thank and express my gratitude to the organizers and the participants, and most of all the speakers for a very engaging and illuminating conference. I hope there'll be more, inshallah. So I'm less interested personally in the normative question about LLMs and AI. I'm also not especially interested personally on the question of what they will be capable or not capable of achieving in the future. Just on a personal note, based on my own limited expertise of LLMs, I don't doubt that something like an iMufti or whatever you want to call it will be a minimum viable iMufti will be possible within 10 years or so, if not sooner than that. That doesn't mean that we should do it. That's for us to debate. And actually, that's the question I want to come to. So the thing that I'm interested in is questions of ontology and political economy, and especially the issue of our civic capacity for reflection. And here, I think we need to acknowledge the philosophers call it différent, the kind of irreducible dichotomy or distinction between human temporality and the temporality of machines and technology. And I think it's become especially acute now. And what I mean by that is our capacity collectively as humans for reflection is far exceeded by the capacity of machines and technology and computing to now simulate first the generation of coherent, socially intelligible, coherent language. As far as I'm concerned, that problem has been solved by LLMs. Think back to about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, before the fabled attention is all you need paper, people were working with LSTMs, and they had these kind of cute, generation of poetry that everybody knew wasn't especially impressive. Does any one of us now question the ability of an LLM, even one with small number of parameters, relative speaking, generating coherent speech? No, they don't generate nonsense. And that's exactly why it's not that LLMs are prone to hallucination. They hallucinate. It's just some of the hallucination happens to be congruent with what we might call facts, but they are hallucinating machines. That's exactly what they are. So the thing that I'm interested in is our collective capacity for reflection as human beings. And if you look towards the Ummah, the one thing that our ulama in the past, certainly, a lot more so than today, because frankly, they don't have the power, were very concerned with was increasing the capacity of the power of the civic space. We all know, we all hear the stories, we all read the history. There was always that tension between the civic space and the sultaniyya. Many of the ulama, when they were defining Ahl al-Hal wal-Aqd, many of them actually expanded the notion. Some said it's just a small group, but some of the ulama actually considered it basically to be the ummah. Ijma' was the ijma' of the ummah. Obviously, the operationalization of that was a big question. Now think about it today, or if after I just want to draw one example. Forget about LLMs. Consider the technology of weapons of indiscriminate killing. Weapons of indiscriminate killing. I'm going to paint, I don't know if this actually happened, I don't know enough about the history of it, but I'm going to draw a very plausible history that scholars at the time when this was introduced, they would have questioned. I mean, the consequences are more lethal than LLMs, and it's a very serious issue. The idea that we could produce weapons that could indiscriminately kill men, women, and children and destroy trees. I mean, forget about LLMs and whether they're halal or haram or mustahab or whatever. What about that piece of technology? What happened? We could have debated endlessly. No, it mattered. It made very little difference because it was co-opted by Muslim states who are now trading in such weapons. And then many of the ulama basically fall in line and said, well, pragmatically, we have to make it, we don't have a choice because we need to defend ourselves. They use the maqasid as a justification for this. So as far as I'm concerned, if you look at the history of fiqh, it mainly moves towards a trajectory of instrumentalization of the fiqh, which falls in line with state powers and other macro institutions. This has been happening for basically a millennia. So if we really want to be serious thinkers and reflectors as an ummah, then these are the questions that we need to start actually addressing in our meetings, in our conferences, because the question about the trajectory of the technology, these are really interesting questions. Please don't misunderstand me. And they're very, very important, but they will happen anyway. But what isn't happening, and I think we who are kind of a bit, inshallah, more conscious, we have to address the question of ontology and political economy. So I'll leave it there.
You have the microphone.
Any comment?
I think someone has. No, it's okay. You can talk. Yeah.
Oh, it was Shwade.
I think there's a potential chat questions as well. I saw.
Yeah, just talk and then I'll check it.
Okay, you got
Let
it.
me check. No, there's nothing on the chat yet. They were just saying that Shuaib was saying he was 1 year old when Karim started working on AI.
We have a lot of young people here, so.
If I can just follow up on the question, the comment that was posed, mashallah, I think that's brilliant. And I just wanted to share it because it really perturbed me for a second. The thought that I'm thinking a particular ruler that we all know in Arabia is probably going to want his own scientists to generate an LLM that can confirm all of his rulings. The one that we would often refer to as Khadam al-Haramain, it seems like he's going to use LLM to khidmat his own rule and his own service. And so the instrumentalization, as you've pointed out, and the way fiqh has evolved, unfortunately, to be co-opted by the state as state powers grew, and as secular nationalist regimes also understood that the power of religion to control societies can be used to legitimize their own rule. I think that's a point of concern that you brilliantly brought up, and also the operationalization of being the entire ummah. Like theoretically, obviously everyone falls in love with it, like the democratizing effect of it is beautiful. But in effect, what it would require is like the room that you're all in right now, mashallah, will be essentially filled to the brim, and the question becomes, how do we also introduce these ideas in our own communities on a small scale so that, inshallah, we see really that beautiful vision of Ahl al being everyone, not just quote unquote having a social media say in things, but having a genuine informed opinion in their best and listening and interacting with one another. So I think that may be one of the few shields that we have against rulers who essentially want their say to be the only say and no one else to be able to compete with them in the religious space or political space, or really any and all spaces where people are allowed to live.
Yeah, can I just add to what the brother just mentioned? And that is that one of the dangers that I definitely foresee is that we will have state actors that will put whatever they can into AI to be able to voice their political activities under religious guises and very effectively through AI. That is a very, very foreseeable future. And that's one of the reasons why I to some extent understand the concerns that people have with AI. It allows you to democratize knowledge and politically utilize it at a scale far faster and wider than ever before. It's not a transmission over, with images or with just websites. You can now access and be able to pour out knowledge in incremental speeds. I don't know if you guys remember, but when ChatGPT first came out, there was I think it was a Bangladeshi brother. He did his MSc, and part of his MSc project for his dissertation, he did something called Hadith GPT. Do you guys remember that episode? And if you remember that? And so I remember when that came out, I think it was around February 2023. When it came out, this was an LLM that was just plugged into Sunni Hadith, right? Nothing but Sunni Hadith. And people started asking it all kinds of, fatwa, right? So on some things it would be correct, but because it didn't have any books of usul, it would get things wrong. So, anything that dies naturally in the sea, generally speaking, you can consume. So somebody asked it, if I find pork in the sea, can I eat it? And it said yes. So right. But here's the thing that was really funny for me, and I think it raised a lot of concern in terms of, not just political debates, but theological debates. Somebody even asked it, and this blew up on Twitter, remember, only Sunni Hadiths, not Shia Hadiths, only Sunni Hadiths. Who is the rightful Imam after the Prophet? It's at Ali. And I remember Twitter just blew up over that debate. And the reason I'm sharing those is because that was for me a glimpse into how if and when this is scaled up, this is going to lead not just good things, but also negative things. In that I feel like it might further divide and reinforce sectarian lines. It may be used as a political force to give oxygen to further political acts. So definitely a voice of caution, definitely a voice of caution. We need to be able to take these things very seriously. And I just wanted to end on one note. China just recently made it compulsory that every child starting from the age of 6, starting this coming year, has to start learning AI. It's now embedded and put into the curriculum. And I think that that is a serious call for concern. And in response to that, Trump signed a mandate that this is now something we have to implement in the US as well. So this is becoming definitely, I would say, a political utility by the two largest superpowers, I'd say, today. And I think that we should definitely start giving this more consideration and developing that infrastructure. And that falls back to what I said earlier. You either ride the train or you drive the train. So we have to, I think, have a more active voice here. I think this is one step towards it. Wallahu alam, but I just wanted to share those points there.
Yeah, thank you. It's Intisar Rab, do you want to talk? He said, yeah.
Sure, thank you. One second. Yes, I want to thank you for convening this to Boumediene, Hamzi, and everyone else who had a role in it. I'm sorry I'm not on screen. I'm traveling, but happy to participate remotely. And I think I just want to make a couple of points or contribute a couple of things that we've been thinking about. I am a professor of law at Harvard and have been working on computational tools that we hope will help in the academic study and kind of traditional study as well of Islamic law. And I also work with Usul.ai, which is one of those conservative, limited projects of the type that Meraj Sayed spoke about, where the aim is to, kind of have a limited, very clean, curated corpus of Islamic knowledge that we're able to use AI and other computation data science tools in ways that that we know there are strengths in, for example, summarizing data or helping to structure data in ways that would take us individually a lifetime of if we were to try to read through, for example, the Tabaqat literature or all fiqh and historical literature, for example, with one project that I'm interested in trying to identify the actual use of legal canons or qawa'id fiqhiyya. But the overall point is that I think that the interventions of scholars like Dr. Yaqub Chaudhry on cautions for what AI can do or should do are important to keep in mind, even as AI is a reality in this world, and approaching it, I think, in a way where we're conscious of what it can and should do, I think can help in advancing our central goal. And I always try to keep the two in mind, the critique and the practical. AI is here, let's use it cautiously. So maybe the Yaqub and Meraj views, if you will, to kind of keep the eye on what I think is central, and that's that we want to be thinking about Islamic law and Islamic knowledge with attention to the divine connection that we're all here to forge and the higher purpose of cultivating our souls individually and collectively, whether that's about us Muslims or Muslims in larger society. And law is a tool, just like AI is a tool toward that. We want to use these tools to help elevate and realize our human potential. And I think if we're keeping that central goal in mind, then the question is, what are the tools in our own respective domains, whether that's philosophy or law or theology, that can, or AI, that can contribute to that mission? And if it takes away from that mission, how can we sound the alarm against it? We're in a world of data, in a way that we know can't quantify the divine, but I think it's always important to try to keep both in mind as we enter this AI first world, and make sure that we're doing what we can to keep, how do we help cultivate the human soul with whatever tools we have at our disposal? So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, any other comments?
I was going to respond to Mahbub, but he left.
Yeah, it's recorded. Yeah. Are you unmuted or?
No, I think it is unmuted. Yeah, you can hear me, right? I think Mahbub brings up a very good point. But I do think that one thing that is informing, my affirmation of the cautious approach and not maybe a radical dismissal of AI out of hand is my own sense of the way that Islamic thought, especially Sharia and fiqh, unfolded over the centuries. At least in my reading of history, it was a very organic and responsive and very slow process that in some senses resisted creating a very pie in the sky utopian vision of the way that society should be, which I think is actually contrasts really interestingly with what I see to be some of the flaws of many Western ideologies. There really, at least in America, there really is no such thing as a conservative in the sense of conserving what's good. Both the conservatives and the liberals and the progressives and the Marxists and all of these different ideologies are very utopian. They want to radically restructure society in their own vision. And I think part of the reason might be because they did not have an organically slow growing body of religious law and ethics like what we have in fiqh and Sharia. So I think that the cautious approach is consistent with our historical experience. Let's not buy into what the evangelists say of what AI is, general intelligence, this, whatever. Let's see what it actually is. What is its most stable and mature form? What are its strengths and weaknesses? Let's experiment with it, figure it out, what works and what doesn't. And I also think the other thing I think that's kind of interesting for me is I have a little bit more confidence in people. So for instance, we can all kind of like what Professor Enlos was saying. She knows from a mile away, a student submits a ChatGPT generated essay. So do I. It reads a certain way. It's very easy to tell. We all know what is what is a generated image. We saw them on many of the slides. We know exactly that's not real. And I actually think that our ability as we get exposed to more and more AI gets even better and more finer. So if the king of Saudi Arabia is going to use AI to generate all kinds of justifications for his decrees rooted in Islam, the thinking person, and I think many people are like this, are going to very easily be able to tell this is just stupidity. And we know you have an agenda. It's always been like this. We've always had a very healthy skepticism of rulers. I don't see why that would go away because this new technology has emerged. So that's kind of my own instincts on this issue.
Right, thank you. So Sheikh Hassan, do you want to say something? Or?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So happy to be here, but sorry that I came late. I had another, a meeting, so I couldn't be here from the beginning. Actually, no, nothing. I was just, listening to the comments. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So on this point of an I-Mufti, I think you've sort of spoken about some optimism and some skepticism, but I think we really need to break it down a bit further into, I'd say, 4 key areas, right? The first one being simple information retrieval. Secondly, forming arguments and argument forming based on that. And then thirdly, forming proper conclusions. And then fourthly, whether we take this, given we're calling this an I-Mufti, whether we as a society say, we take this as an authoritative source of information, right? And so when you talk about the skepticism, for the first point, simple information retrieval, personally, I think that that's something that we should definitely, with LLMs, be pursuing. Because if you look at the current generation, like my generation right now, I'm not that old, I'm only like 22. So people my age, they're already using ChatGPT for pretty much everything. I know a couple of people who actually even use it to search up Islamic rulings, even though they shouldn't be. And so, like with the internet, like with other forms that we mentioned throughout history, this just becomes the way which people access information. So if we don't essentially use it, at least for the base case, information retrieval, then one could argue that we, as a society, we are failing in our mission of properly conveying the message of Islam to the people, because this is how they attain information. So on that point, I think we should try to be very much optimistic and try to push this, obviously with the correct guardrails, and make sure that it's accurate. Now, on the second points on reasoning and forming conclusions, right? I very much echo the sentiment of Dr. Yaqub mentioned with being skeptical in regards to these things, because like we've seen even with the internet, right? When we make this kind of information public, right? You have people, who don't know anything, taking these arguments and coming up with their own ideas. When as a Muslim, I don't think, from my perspective, that's for the general population, that's not the ideal, right? For scholars and shuyukh, sure, to enhance their arguments and to verify, but we have to identify what audience each application is targeting. All right. And then on the final point of, actually taking this as an authoritative source of information, I think, me personally, again, I wouldn't agree with that. And I think this is an important point where we need to bring in Islamic scholarship. And a part of the reason why I think a more wider point on Islamic society and Muslim society and where we're lacking is the separation of these secular studies with a traditional Islamic scholarship. And one of the brothers or one of the speakers mentioned being able to bridge the technological aspects with the software engineers with the classical shuyukh, right? And because if we separate the two, then you have people guiding and leading the secular fields who aren't motivated by the Sharia, and people motivated leading the Sharia who are unaware of the secular fields and unable to give true fatwa with knowledge of the secular fields. So those 4 aspects, I think, when you talk about the skepticism, we need to understand and separate, so that when we talk about what we should do, we have a clear understanding of where these concerns are and where they sit. If anyone has any thoughts on that, please elaborate.
Jazakallah khair. I feel like in many ways we are all saying the same thing, because I don't think any of us is arguing that we should just use ChatGPT for all of these things, get all the information from the internet and come up with a fiqh ruling. I don't think that anyone in this room has claimed that. I feel like when it comes to fiqh in particular, you have different levels of ulama, right? You have a mujtahid, which can actually derive a new ruling that did not exist before. I believe that is actually something that ChatGPT, from a Quranic perspective, is not suitable for. Because Allah Azza wa Jalla says, if you do not know something, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. So that's how, however, if we're talking about a model that's actually looking at all the fatwas and providing it to you and says, based on this, I feel like this is the strongest based on what this scholar said and this scholar said, then that becomes, instead of us going to the books, which are Ahl al-Dhikr, they're basically published or written by Ahl al-Dhikr, we are delegating that task to the model, right? So basically, we're essentially indirectly asking Ahl al-Dhikr, right? So that in that, like, such a model, I think, is acceptable. But if we take a model and say this is going to be the mujtahid and it's going to give us new rulings regarding new matters that were not present before, I think that contradicts the command of the Quran. And one last, and then you can. And also regarding coming up with logical conclusions, I don't think that this is something that should be published and for the public to use. Definitely not. But I do believe that for someone that's very, very well versed in the science of kalam and is very well versed in the science of computer science, which I'm not one of those. I'm not claiming to be. There is value for basically algorithmic theology, where formal conclusions can be extracted or can be arrived at with either symbolic AI or modern AI. But then again, that shouldn't be for the public. It should be for that specialized individual, right? So again, I feel like all of us are saying the same thing in different ways. If it says this is the tarjih of the scholars and these are this is my reasoning based on what the scholar said, basically that we're just delegating the task to ChatGPT to ask the books for us, and I don't think that's a problem. But the problem becomes when we ask it to give us the ruling for a new matter, a new topic, a new mas'ala.
What is ChatGPT's views? What's the different views? So in the subject, which is the correct
so then, so you don't allow it to have the last word. You allow it to basically you can actually. So with the ijtihad, you can't even ask it to make it ijtihad, right? You have to ask the Ahl al-Dhikr to make ijtihad. However, with this, you can ask it, tell me what are the fatawas and what do you prefer, and then I decide, or whoever the scholar, it decides which one, whether it's sound or not, right? So that becomes the mechanism where you protect the tradition from the imperfect system, so to speak. Jazakallah khair. I mean, you raise good points, and I think this at least gave me the opportunity to realize that perhaps we're all saying the same thing.
So one question that I have that I think about often is, I mean, we're talking about what should our ethical and moral and Sharia approach to these new technologies be? I think it's a fair question. And, what should we as leaders in different types of institutions, academic institutions, traditional institutions, teachers that we are, like, what should our approach be? But what if it's the case that it's too late, that this technology has spread so fast and that everyone is using it, that it really is the case that it's done. And that it's really, we can say don't use it, but it's because it is so widespread and becomes so quickly normalized that it will have very little effect. I think that's probably where we're at, realistically speaking. And so if that is the case, if either it's already happened or it's probably the probable near-term future, then the question is different. All right, now that we have this new empirical social reality that we're facing, what exactly is our response? And I'm not quite sure. Do you understand what I'm saying? It may be out of our hands. It's outside of our power. It's already spread too fast. It's done. I'm just saying that that's probably the empirical reality now. Now we're actually in response mode. It's basically umum al-balwa. right? That's what we're talking about, right? Yeah.
Okay, so I hope we have a bit more time. I recently organized a symposium on legal education and generative AI. And one of the issues that was raised, its cognitive impact. So maybe AI would adversely affect our critical thinking skills. So what I just want to ask all the panel members and also people who are online, want to ask that, is it that generative AI would have negative impact of our being good Muslims or good scholars? Because, I mean, I trained in fiqh, struggle, forbearance in pursuit of knowledge is something that is built in our legal tradition, right? So now that we have everything on tip of our fingers, right? Is it that epistemological crisis, what Dr. Yaqub mentioned, right? Is also about that we just may be becoming intellectually lazy and maybe less pious.
Yes.
I think Yaqub wants to say
Maybe
something.
Yaqub, do you want to give a response?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer one closing remark, and then I have to go. And I think it does relate to the question of laziness, intellectual laziness, which brother mentioned. So there's an incident in Quran where Talut is appointed as a king to lead the Israelite army, and as you know, they're going to march against Goliath, the great and his great army. So anyway, they come up to a stream, and he tells them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to test you with a stream, with a river or stream. They come up to the stream, and he tells them that any one of you who drinks from the stream is not with me. Any one of you who just takes a scoop of water with your hand is with me. So anyway, they came up to the stream. The majority just, they needed to quench their thirst, so they went all in for it. But then there were the others who only took the scoop. Anyway, later on, they carried on down the line, and the people who went all in for it, they just said, well, we cannot, we have no power against, Goliath and his forces. We can't cope with them. So, we're going to hang back here. So in the end, it was, just Talut and his small force who ended up, vanquishing the enemy. So I think in that is the proportion. There's something to reflect on in terms of the proportion of how much AI should be in our lives, in our systems of knowledge, and in our society. That's all.
All right. Any last comments, or maybe to wrap up? Yeah.
So you can make a comment. So my preference, if you ask my preference, I would rather, make a dua for Allah to say kun fayakun and for AI not to exist. That's my preference. But we are in a situation like Dr. Miraj said. I don't think any of us has that level of sainthood to make that dua and for that to happen. So we are we're trying to be practical here. We're trying to be cautious, but at the same time, we know the dangers, the others, basically in our epistemology, there is a side of evil and there is a side of good, right? And when we say the others, there is a real danger from the side of evil, right? So how do we just sit back and allow the side of evil to take over, similar to how we did, and Gaza is happening right now, where we don't have anything to protect ourselves with, right? Or do we take a more practical stance and we say we learn from our mistakes, even though we would rather see a world without nuclear bombs and atomic bombs, right? But we are in a situation that we need to protect ourselves, similar with AI. So that's my comment on that.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to add that a lot of times as Muslims, we reduce religious authority to knowledge and having the most knowledge, and you study to become a religious authority. But of course, that's not really what it's about. There's a lot of things that you need to do to induct yourself into a religious tradition and be accepted as an authority, ranging from demonstrations of piety to how you carry yourself, how you talk, do you use the language that people expect. And so there's a lot more going on than just data crunching. So in that regard, I don't think we really need to be afraid that a machine's going to sort of, or digital entity is going to kick people out. Although I do think that perhaps as Muslims, we might start to appreciate a bit more the human sides of religious leadership. I mean, just as an example, I was, like most of us, I was watching the news about the selection of the new Pope. And I found it interesting that they don't talk about the new Pope as the one who knows the most about the Bible or something, which is, I think, is as Muslims how we tend to discuss it. But there was a bit more focus on his service and his piety, his spirituality, and so forth. And yeah, intrinsically, these are the things we look for in convincing religious authorities, but maybe we'll actually give even more space to verbalizing that along with the formal study if machines can output the results of formal study.
All right, so. So maybe, yeah, the Sheikh Hassan, do you want? I can see it. I have the microphone, maybe. Yeah, Sheikh Hassan, do you want to say you can have an AI faqih? Does it make sense or not? I mean, here, Sheikh Hassan is specialized in Sina and this kind of stuff. Yeah, maybe very related to our previous discussion, actually, yeah.
I couldn't hear your voice clearly.
Do you think we can have, from a point of view of Masha'i philosophy?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Actually, this is a long debate. It's a very controversial debate in Hausa right now. There are so many, fuqaha, especially those fuqaha who are concerned with new issues in, or modern issues in fiqh and in Hausa are discussing the aspects of AI and how it can be used, especially during the process of ijtihad or, deducting the Shari ruling. But almost all of the discussions that I could see just prove that AI at most can be a very good tool to find the sources or find the usuli or fiqhi bases that can help the mujtahid to come to the better or more accurate fatwa. The discussion, I think the most important discussion about AI is that whether we can have in future. So I would like to, divide this discussion into two parts. The first part is what we call it Soghravi, or about the instance of AI. The instances of AI that we have right now are full of the, shortcomings and problems. So probably these AIs cannot become a good mujtahid or good faqih. So this is a Soghravi discussion, which is based on the instances instances of AI, on the models of AI, on the APIs, and so on and so forth. So these are the discussions that probably I cannot talk very much about because these are related to the computer science. And even this in the Soghravi aspect, there is a discussions from a fiqhi point. What are the limitations of the current AI that cannot become a faqih? So some of these limitations, I think, cannot be removed. And these limitations are there. And probably, if we want to remove these limitations, we would remove the essential parts of AI models. So this is a Soghravi part. We have also a Kobravi part, which is about the general aspects or general fiqhi ruling about a robot or something non-human or a being that is not human, is it acceptable in fiqh for a non-human to go and deduce the fatwa and give us the fatwa, whether this fatwa is hujjah or not? This is also a very important discussion. So to answer this question, whether a non-human being can deduce a fatwa, the most important thing that we have to do is to go and study the adilla or the proofs that give authority to the maraja, to the mujtahid. Why the saying of mujtahid has authority in fiqh. There are some evidence or some proofs for that. For example, one of the proofs is Sireh Ughalla, which is going to the alim, asking Ahlul Dhikr, Fas'alu Ahlul Dhikr, is just a supportive idea for that Sireh Ughalla. So the action of the Ughalla in every case is when they don't know something, they go to someone who knows about that field of study and they ask him. So the same goes with fiqh. When I don't know a Shari'i ruling, I would probably go to someone who knows about fiqh, who knows about the hadith, Quran, usul, fiqh, rijal, and I would ask him a question. So this is Sireh Ughalla. So we have to study whether that Sireh Ughalla would include asking AI, whether the Ughalla, the people who have knowledge, who have intellect, who are rational people, would they trust an AI? And let's assume that AI is infallible, doesn't make any mistake. Even if that AI is infallible, would uqala, rational people, trust that AI or not? Yes. So this is, for example, one of the proofs that gives the authority to the mujtahid. There are other, proofs for that as well. For example, Sireh Mutasharri'ah, for example, the discussions on Hujjat Khabar Wahid, the discussions on An-Niyaba al-Amma lil-Imam alayhi salam. So one of the bases for authority for the sayings of the mujtahid, for the fatwa of a mujtahid, is the Niyabatul Amma of the mujtahid from the Imam. The ahadith that have been issued from the Imams that gives this authority to the fuqaha. Whether those ahadith include AI or not, whether the Sirat al-Mutasharra include AI or not, this is a very long discussion, and it should be, I haven't seen anything yet written comprehensively about these issues. Some of these issues have been presented in some conferences in Qom. I've been researching about that, but not a very comprehensive work, not on the Sughravi part and not on the Kubravi part. I haven't seen yet. So this is the general idea that I have about your question, whether an AI can become a faqih or not.
Okay, Jazakallah khair, thank you very much. Okay, any maybe comments? Maybe just we need to wrap up a little bit. All right, okay, thanks all, and thank you all. Jazakallah khair for people coming in person and speakers and online, and inshallah see you soon. Then. We'll try to go to our nearby coffee shop if you want to socialize further. Okay, Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
We can make a group photo.
Yeah, maybe we should. Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Come to